Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to a Wolfram Language Design Review. This is one of those things that we did something years ago that we now want to kind of make a bridge to something different. So for eons and eons, we had the option plot style that determines the styles of things in plots. When we started introducing things like bar charts and other things that we thought of as charts, we introduced a new option, ChartStyle, which is very similar to plot style, but not exactly the same. This has been very confusing to everybody, including me, including LLMs, including both humans and AIs. So we want to fix this.
Well,
So,
it's not that similar. I mean, there are important differences, right?
okay, well, that's what
There are
we're going to
differences
work
that we
through.
felt were important.
Yeah, that's what we're going to work through. Okay, okay, all right. So plot style ABC applies A to the first curve, B to the second, and so on. Now, plot style, if it's given sublists, those are treated like directives or not?
Those are treated as directives, yes. So if you have list and then list red thick, you get a thick red line.
Okay. So let's just clarify what's happening there. So if I say this, and then I say plot style, arrow, if I were to say thick, comma, red, I would just get thick and not red because red is what the heck?
No, this is right. I mean, plot style is different based on whether you have one thing or not one thing in the input.
Right. So if you had list of sign of X, would that be enough, or is it actually the numbers?
I think list of sign of X is enough.
So yeah, so Stephen, change the first argument, just put a list at the beginning of in front of sign of X, and you'll see the difference, I think.
Um, sorry, so again, list what?
But list at in front of,
Yeah,
or
wrap that in list.
yes, wrap that in list, however you want the sign. Soon you'll be able to just select that and hit open brace.
Well, that didn't do what
That
you thought.
surprises me a little bit, but
all right. So
it's
do
one of
do
those
cosine X. Do cos. Yeah, then it'll be clear.
yeah. It's one of those things where when we were doing some of this stuff like around version
Yeah.
6 or something, or maybe a little bit
Okay,
after, it's like the implementation and the docs don't actually entirely agree.
okay, all right, okay. So we got a mess here. Okay,
Yeah.
so by the way, look at that. That's not a great thing. See that at the
What's
top?
not a great thing?
The dots here, they're not equally spaced at the top or the
That
bottom.
is
A bug.
interesting.
They're still
That's
they're
some
showing that error a bunch of the time. Anyway, that's another thing to look at. It looks like a bug to me.
What's not equally spaced?
This there shows dots very close together at the peak. Maybe you can't see it through.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it may have been an anti-aliasing issue or something, or
Okay,
Okay.
in any case,
Right, but of course, plot does have adaptive recursion,
I'm
right?
well aware.
but
I'm
this
well aware.
isn't that.
Okay.
Right. If I were to say here, you know, mesh arrow all, I should see the adaptive points. And yes,
Yeah.
of course, those go in there, but that's a different thing.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So did you send this by email, by the way? Does this mean I have to save it separately? It does.
Kristen already put it in your Dropbox, which is
Oh,
presumably where you opened it from.
it's not where I opened it from. You sent it an email. So
Oh, I
I
did
opened it
send it an
from
email. Sorry. So,
yeah, so that's not where I opened it from. Oh my gosh, where is this?
it is in General Box Meetings Graphics Summit.
Well, I'm going to call it B. BBB, because that's what that was. Okay, so next time, please don't send it by email. if
Okay.
it's something where I'm supposed to pick it up from some other place.
So sorry, next time I will either send it to Kristen or you, but not both.
Yeah, right.
Right. And of course, the point is if you then added, I don't know if there's a third axis we can grind on, but certainly if you added like sorry, green after the red, right, that would just not be used because you don't have
Of
any.
course. Of course.
Whereas if you had a sublist, then, the green would win out over the red and you'd have dotted green curves.
And here
Right.
is where I will tell everybody listening to use directive instead of list for grouping styles.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, and that would work here, right? If I use that
Yes.
for. By the way, does it work to have a list inside directive? It does, doesn't it?
Directive effectively flattens everything out.
Okay, fine.
So you can have
Okay.
list
All
of
right.
whatever structure.
Great. Okay. So now in ChartStyle right now, first element in the first.
So it's two-dimensional. That's the big difference. All of our other plots are one-dimensional.
Yep. Well, they're not all, in fact, one-dimensional, as we're seeing here.
Well,
You're saying there are multiple groups here, but there are many ways that you could get multiple groups even here, particularly with all these crazy plot layout things, which are still done the wrong way around. But yes. But so here, I see. This is going at the lowest level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's going to be just incomprehensible to people. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, now what if I wanted these to be different? What? What the hell is this?
right. So at on one level of grouping, you do red and then
So
blue, and then
at
the
the
other, you're
row
not making any changes. And
at the row level, you do red, blue, and at the column level, you do nothing.
Okay, this is horrible.
right. I mean, if you change that none to or
And that's
know.
consistently done for all the charting functions, the two levels.
Yeah, brilliant. I've never understood that. I bet I can
Which
find
is
bugs.
why we're having this meeting.
How many seconds do you think it's going to take me to find a bug in what you've done here? I found a bug already where you said, "Oh, you didn't understand why it did the thing that it did." Let's try this. Yellow, purple.
Well, I mean, that I don't know is a useful thing to do, right? Because,
No,
right,
but I just don't believe you. I mean, what the hell is this doing? What's this
right.
doing?
Well, it's applying yellow after it's applied red and blue, which so you see the yellow, right? If you made some opacity in there,
What else
then
could I make? What other things could I mix in here? Could I do
Go
cross
down to the
hatching?
next example,
Filling and all kinds of
or
things.
two examples down, right? So there you have edge forms for, the rows and gray levels for the columns.
Yeah, really bad design.
Different graphics dimensions.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's a really bad design. But okay. Well, certainly. Okay, so let's keep going with what you're saying here.
Right. So that is what ChartStyle does, in its generality. And, in terms of
what does tabular do for this?
So tabular, at the moment doesn't have a lot of styling, but it does it, within the realm of plot style and chart
And grid,
style
and what does grid do? If I were to try and make a grid, and then I said, let's say ABCD.
So you can
And then
go
I
down.
say background, arrow. What am I going to do here? Am I saying red, green?
So those are column backgrounds, non-repeating.
light yellow, purple.
Right. I mean, that's not going to be useful. Well, I guess it'll be a little bit useful, but the mixing is undefined, as I found when I was creating examples for cyclic. Something like opacity or something would be better defined.
Okay, so this concept of a style mix-in, you're leaning into with this sort of multi-dimensional thing, you're leaning into the concept of style mix-ins. Is that correct?
Where in the viz functions, the mixing function is basically directive. So you have a list of things. It's not
Yeah,
trying
I got
to.
it. I got it. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. But I mean, the basic point, which is unbelievably confusing, right, is that, I mean, I'd never understood this, just to be clear, right? You're saying in ChartStyle that the first thing is the overarching row specification, and the second one is the column mix-in. Is that correct?
Well,
It depends on the orientation of your charts, right?
I mean, it's the row style. I mean, it's directive of the row style and the column style. And if they're both colors, the latter style wins. If they're things that aren't both style,
No, I
both
understand, but
colors.
fundamentally, this is only useful if they're mix-ins, right? I mean,
Yes.
it is aimed at mix-ins.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
but
no, but
the
you might want to emphasize different things. If you
I
look at the
agree.
actual layouts that you have for bar charts and whatnot, you may want to emphasize, columns or rows. It
Right.
depends
But
on
the
your.
idea that you type none,
But
and
the
that
mix in
means,
is a little bit complicated. We have more ways of doing it now than we had when we originally designed it. We had a more primitive graphics language back then. Now we have fillings and
yes,
and other things. So we have more ways now than we did. But it's
I
still
understand.
a little bit complicated.
Okay, so let me just understand what you're saying. That the concept, which I never understood, that you specify some columns with a none, and then you want to highlight a particular column, so you put red there or something, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the idea. Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's unbelievably confusing. And notice that with this grid thing, what is grid doing here? Is grid doing the same thing? Is
Grid
that a
is
row
actually blending
specification?
the colors.
although in some undefined fashion that it's very easy to create examples where it does where nobody can explain what it's doing. It's not it's not intentionally mixing them. If you did something like opacity or something, then
Okay, what the hell is this doing?
well,
Probably doing mixing red and green, probably.
yes, you said
Every
all
column
rows
is
are
red and every row is green.
yeah. So you'd need an extra level of list if you want to try
Where?
it.
There?
Yeah, sure.
I'm mystified by why that happened.
Right, because if it's a two, right, when you give it a list of two elements, then the first one is the columns and the second one is the rows. So you said all columns are red and all columns are green.
So
All
this
rows are
one here.
green. Yes.
Right. In the second one, you're saying the first column should be red, the second column should be green, and you haven't given a specification, right? If you wanted to do the other way, you'd need to put an empty list first. Or do I have that backwards? Maybe I have that, right? But,
No, I think you're right. This.
Yep. So it's exactly the same thing as grid. So I really don't understand why you're saying it's so incredibly confusing.
Well, I mean, for the record, I find this confusing.
Okay, but yes, yes, but pointing to grid as if saying that this is so much worse than anything else we've designed. Well, no, it's pretty much the same as everything else.
Okay, wait a minute. You're saying grid is bad and ChartStyle is bad. I agree with both of those statements.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So you've got a proposal here. Okay.
Okay, so first level of the proposal is plot style of the list of colors works like chart style of the list of colors. Where by colors I mean style, and list I mean
Right.
list, not list of lists or
But it's digging to the deepest level, basically.
right.
But
Well, I
now
mean,
if I wanted to
it
do this,
depends actually on the function, which is part of the bad aspect of this.
okay, all right.
Um,
I don't know how many levels you can go, because aren't there like bar chart 3D? Couldn't you go another level and things?
No, we
Yes.
decided we stopped it all at 2, even when we do a 3D layout, because
Well, why?
yeah,
No, I'm chart style, I believe, is documented to have as many levels as you need, right?
chart style is documented to have as many levels, but the individual chart functions all stop at 2.
I
exactly.
see.
Because basically the layout got
Yeah, the
unwieldy.
layout breaks down. I mean, it just gets, yeah,
It
basically
gets even
breaks.
more incomprehensible than with 2 levels. That's
Yes,
the
I
basic
mean
point.
there are
But
cases
people
where I
use
would
2.
like to do more than 2 levels.
Right. People
You
use
know,
2 levels a lot, Stephen. It's not unheard
No,
of at all.
I agree, but I think we should have something general. But so now, okay, so what you're proposing here is that plot style drills to the lowest level,
proposing that
not
plot
obviously
style
correct.
behaves like chart style did.
And it's not obviously correct to me. Honestly, I would expect this to make the first group red and the second group orange. And if I wanted to get, I mean, if I wanted to drill further,
Then we have ways farther in the notebook to do that.
okay, let's look. Okay, this is cyclic, but that's a minor thing.
Yep.
I mean, that solves the cyclic wrapper solves the cyclicity problem for styles in grid and in these other things.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What does it do by default if it runs off the end and you didn't say cyclic?
You mean if you just had like 7 colors there?
No, if you had 2 colors but there are 5 bars or something, what does it do?
By
What,
default, it cycles. I mean, it has to be some color.
well, but it could
So
be
it
a
either
default
cycles
color.
or the bars are like black or something.
No, it could be a default color. The bar chart default color. And then what's the point of cyclic if it's going to cycle by default?
I mean, so in like that case with the red and blue bars, the cyclic is unnecessary. But it's clear what it is doing. You know,
Yeah.
the one below it though, there's not really a way to do that right now with chart style without, oh, that says chart style instead of plot style. But
You mean plot style here?
yeah, exactly. Um, if you wanted to do that, gray bars with the last orange one. Right now, it would either be chart style goes to gray, 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 orange, or chart style goes to gray and you put a style wrapper on the last element in the list.
Neither of which I consider terrible. I think these syntaxes, look, here's a principle about these designs. I mean, sometimes the design is so hard to remember that it's better to just say, put a freaking style wrapper around that element of the data. See what I'm saying? It's just not worth it to
Yes.
try and invent this kind of
Small-
backhand.
the
With
small
that
things
said,
it's good.
with things like tabular, it's hard to, there's not a thing to actually put a style wrapper around.
Well, that may be a mistake. Look,
But
I'll tell you the general principle.
but I think I find this syntax incredibly natural, and is something
This
I
one
would
is
use.
okay. It's okay, except for the fact that I don't really know whether that list is going to be applying to a single element or whether it's going to be applying across many elements.
Right, but if I had that, but if I had that in the plot style, for plot, I would use this all the frickin' time, right? Because if I'm
Yeah.
illustrating
No, I know this.
Convergence of power series, right? I want the true function to be styled differently from all my all my Taylor polynomials.
Yes, but yet in plot style with the plot right now. Okay, let me just go through the semantics. You're saying that first point is all of these functions know how many things they are trying to style.
Yes.
Okay, now I do think that in what we showed at the beginning, where there was just a single one, but it was in a list, that is a bug, that it didn't use, that it didn't think of that as, in other words, okay, I'm going to make the following claim. That you can look at the depth of listery in the data, so to speak, and that tells you how to explore the style information. Not the number of curves, but the depth of listing that the specifications are in.
One thing to remember about sort of design or the style is what you want to compare. So if you look at that top one there, those
Yeah.
yellow bars should be comparable. Like that's what you want to communicate.
Yeah,
What
okay,
should be
I get
compared?
it. I get it. But I think I'm just making a principle about how to interpret the plot style. Okay. And the principle we've already got in plot is the plot style is going to have the nesting of plot style mirrors the nesting of the data.
No, it's just linear.
No,
No, it's
no, no. I
not.
mean,
No, it's not.
I understand what you're saying.
No, watch what I'm saying. I'm saying, look, if I say sine x, sine 2x, sine 3x, for example, or just sine 2x there,
Mhm.
and I say plot style. Okay, so this is looking for a two-level deep thing. So if I say red, blue here, it'll do red for the first curve, blue for the second curve. If I now do red dotted, it's looking for one level of list. So that then becomes a directive. Okay.
But it's
If
still just linear.
what are you talking about? It's
You
it's
can only
using
have a linear list of functions in the first
yes,
argument.
yes, yes. I know that. I know that here. I know that in this case. It is not obvious to me what should happen if what's here, let me see what it does. Okay, let's say we do this, and then we do cos x. What's it going to do?
Yell it.
Ah.
Yeah, so that first list of sine x and 2x gets the same
Right.
style,
So it's not obvious to
Okay,
me
I'm
that
going
this
to
is
say
right.
right now this is undefined behavior.
Yes, and
probably.
I don't think
Yes.
this is right. I don't think this is right. I think the correct thing to do here is to use the data, use the listing of the data to decide how to explore this. And I would claim in this case, I have to think a little bit about what I think it should do.
Well, I think we're now back into chart style territory, right?
Mhm.
No.
Yes, because if we need to sort of decide how many dimensions we have and in which dimension we're going to start
I
orienting
mean,
ourselves,
there
right?
is a problem that dates back to 6 or 5, probably. We started to get vector valued functions that are not explicitly vector valued, and we're going to get many more. So from ND-solve we get interpolating functions that are vector valued.
Or some of the Weierstrass functions.
I guess, yeah. But that's going to happen much, much more in the future.
Okay, I'd like to suggest a principle here.
And so there's no explicit list, is what I'm saying. There's none of that.
I see what you're saying. Okay, we've got two components being plotted, even though there's no explicit list.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to suggest a principle. The principle is you look at the list level of the data and you use that to decode the list levels in the plot style. Right? So in other words, what I'm saying is if I want those curves to be, if I say here, red, green, okay, what I expect is the first two curves here are both red and the second two are both green. If I were to say here, what I would expect is the first two curves are red, the second two, the first one is blue, the second one is yellow. Does that make sense? And were I to go even more levels here, were I to say here, yellow dotted.
But then we really need to stop interpreting those things as directives. That's gonna.
I'm sorry, what do you mean? No. Look.
I see what you're saying.
If you drilled another level, it's a directive. I agree that that should not be a preferred syntax.
But you know it's ambiguous, right? Because that blue yellow could have been yellow dotted.
No, it's not ambiguous. If that says yellow dotted, then what that means is the first curve, the cosine curve is yellow, and the cosine 2x curve is purely dotted with the default color. There's no mix in here. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe there's another syntax that provides mix-ins, but I think mix-ins are
Okay, so
confusing.
what happens if after the list cosine 2x, you have, bezel J0x?
Well, I'm just going to put something simpler in here. I'm going to put cosine 3x here.
Okay, but not in there. I mean, that's another question, but I'm saying after that closing brace.
Okay, there.
Yep.
Cosine 3x.
Okay, what's the style of cosine 3x?
The default style. Unless we assume it's cyclic by default. But I
plot
think
style has always been cyclic by default.
Okay, fine. Then it's red.
And if we have a fourth function,
Yeah,
then
let's put it in. Let's put it in. Cosine 4x.
but you've put in a list. What if I don't put in a list? What if I
don't care. Okay, I'll put it not on a list. Cosine 4x.
Yep.
Okay. Well, then you have then I'm on the horns of a dilemma here. Because I could do the very weird thing of saying that yellow and dotted are like a directive.
I think if you have
that's not
explicit
going to
lists,
happen.
using style wrappers is probably the easiest, the deeper.
Well, I agree, but I think I'm trying to look for consistency. So this thing here, right? The consistent thing to do with this one will be to consider yellow dotted to be a style, to be a directive. Although I admit that that's fairly weird. Otherwise, it's got to default to, for example, the first element of that list, which I don't think is right. I think that really should be treating that as a directive. So, I mean, just to write this out, we could write this out in terms of style, blah, comma, yellow dotted, right? Put those in a list, it wouldn't matter, correct? So that's what I'm claiming this should be equivalent to. I admit that this is a little weird, but I also think this is probably not. Yeah, I mean, okay, so this is my proposal, is that what happens. Yeah, now how is this consistent or inconsistent?
I feel like in the process of trying to get rid of a design that you find confusing, we're marching straight forward into a swamp of confusingness.
Okay, all right, we may be. I'm not sure. Tell me how this is or isn't consistent with grid.
Oh.
Well,
I mean, I don't know that there's any grid equivalent to that.
No. I mean, this is a tree. This is sort of a tree model of data.
I mean, there may be some sort of data set equivalent of this, but I don't know off the top of my head without
we should
trying
find
things.
out. Okay, let's keep going here. So, I mean, I think we're understanding what the confusion is. Okay, this cyclic thing is a red herring. I mean, the cyclic thing is fine. But
I mean, it is, but it was, a thing that in a meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were looking at cyclic. I mean, you and I both, I think, simultaneously were like, "Oh, cyclic should be part of the plot style design."
Yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
no, I
It
think
solves some problems.
it's a pure win.
Yeah, it solves a bunch of problems of really
Like,
ridiculous syntax that we had
I think,
before.
yeah, directive and cyclic, I think they're great. They are pure.
Yeah, they clarify things. But the question is really what's going to happen in, when you're using pure lists and so on. Okay, so let's keep going and look at what else you have here.
Right. And so basically the big part of it is bringing in associations.
Which I like the idea of doing that.
I thought you might.
I think this is a good idea. And one that we might be able to generalize to use for the non-labeled column case. What happens if you just say list plot and you have a list of associations? Does it do the right
It
thing?
depends on what the structure of the associations is.
Well, I mean, let's say I've got
So I mean, just this is one of those where you know that you're bringing in a data set that or a tabular that we refer to. That species in the option refers to that data, to that tabular. You okay?
hold on. Okay, I got those things. Now if I say list plot of that, what the hell is that?
So
That?
it took the first key as X and the second key as Y, which coincidentally is how you named them, but it is not reading the X and the
Yeah, I
Y.
understand.
It's, you could name it cat and dog and it would do the same thing.
Right. So is it basically just doing values on the association and then
It is doing some form of values. And so here you didn't give pairs. And so it is, as if you have 10 data sets of 3 heights. Right.
What's the x-axis?
1, 2, 3.
Because why?
I think that
Because
this,
I mean that's what list plot of list.
do values on all those and see what the corresponding, values of 159. Yeah. So that, remember we documented.
Yeah, right. That's 10 data set triples. Yeah,
Right.
that's fine. It did the right thing.
Right.
Yes.
And by courtesy, it labeled those things with XYZ.
Right.
Yes.
A bit excessively, perhaps, but
Well, I think it did a great job. I'm happy with it.
Right. Yes. And here's a case where one might use map indexed, right? We mapped pound 2, first of pound 2 goes to, or list of first of pound 2 comma pound 1 across the elements and
Yeah, right. Right. Okay. Tabular column. Oh, this is what we just looked at. Yeah. Then all of A
and if you have nameless tabulars, do you like list the column and row column numbers or as the left-hand side?
Hold on, I'm a little bit confused what this did. So this is saying that, I mean, by the way, if I wanted to use a different set of colors there, what would I do?
look at the next example.
Okay. I see. So that's effectively indexing into a list.
Right. I mean, really what it would be doing is essentially doing like a group by on species and plotting each of the groups as a thing.
Because that is how those categorical variables are typically used. They denote different data sets. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Right.
Okay.
So hold on, let me just understand this. So you're saying, so these things, this is a plot style which we can think of as a list of associations. The data is a list of associations. And we're plot style. I mean, I like this functionality. I'm just trying to understand the semantics here.
So there are more things that
Right. And I don't know that I thought about this syntax in conjunction with list of associations, as opposed to like tabular and dataset type things.
Well, I assume that this thing here could be a list of associations and this selector would still work.
I mean, it doesn't yet. I mean, right
Okay,
now
it
that
should.
selector is just tabular.
Okay, but it should. Why not? Good. That sounds good.
I mean,
well, it either sounds good or bad.
I don't know. I mean, I think we should think about it. Do an explicit convert to tabular and use it from there on out.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I guess the question is, do any of these plots currently have some ruled syntax for which this might be ambiguous? If not, you could try to just like can the two tabular the left-hand side and
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
go on your merry way.
there are association forms of that, like say
I know.
list plot takes. So you can do association of X value goes to Y value. At which point that wouldn't be the right thing to do.
No, but that's inside an association. I think the syntax is not ambiguous. I mean, maybe I'm not thinking of some particular weird visualization function, but I
It
think
may
it's
not
not ambiguous.
generally be ambiguous, but there may be cases that are. But
Okay, why don't you check it out? I don't think it is.
Yep.
I can't immediately think of one. But now,
But here's the big thing. If you're comfortable with this way of referring to the species values as delimiting groups,
I think I am.
then there's more things we want to use it for.
In visualization or in other stuff?
Visualization.
Okay.
Plot markers and
Exactly.
I
So
think
we
it's
want to
nice. I
up the
think it's nice.
dimensionality of these
Yeah.
plots, and the dimensionality, we don't have any more geometric dimensions to go in. So it's going to go in graphical dimensions.
So we believe.
So we believe.
Anyway, clearly not. Okay. Yes. Is there only one? I mean, what happens? I mean, I could presumably do a mix in here with your current, I could say species is goes to those three colors, and then something like the cross hatching is different for three different
right. I mean, this data
petals.
set only has one categorical thing, but if you had like island or something, you could do island goes to three different point sizes or
Yes, I like it.
Or
So
shapes.
that's a mix in. Okay, so just so we're understanding, that's a mix in case.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a whole discussion. And there are some for points, everything works. For other plots, it's more complicated.
Okay. But I'm still trying to understand. I'm still trying to come to terms with mix-ins in other cases, which I'm really not believing in as nearly as much. For some reason, this one seems very reasonable for mix-ins.
It is, and it's the best working case. So the other ones, which we're not kind of going live with for the reason that there are more complications.
Well, I mean, these cases back here, we've already done with weird stuff here.
Right.
There's a bunch of weird mix-in behavior there, which is probably not documented and not, Okay. So let's take a look at this list of lists. Oh boy. Okay, so you're now proposing using this to try and untangle our syntaxes from before.
Correct. And if we wanted to go more than 2 levels, then we would introduce, a numeric scheme.
Yeah,
1, 2,
yeah.
3.
I have to say, I think the numeric scheme might be the best thing from the beginning because I don't think of them as rows and columns. I mean, I think of them as, I'm thinking of them as different data sets. Are they different rows? I don't know. I mean,
Is
are
it
the
the first
things in
level of
each?
list or the second level, or
Yeah, right. And that's different. Like, quiz. For I mean, I don't know. The first level of list is rows and the second level is columns, but that's quite unobvious. But it is pretty obvious what's the first level, what's the second level.
Mhm.
I mean, especially noting that in tabular, it's the other way around, right? In terms of how we store things. We're doing column-wise storage.
Right. But it's still,
Accessors are still.
I know,
yeah.
I know. But, okay. All right. Let me just see to the end here.
Right. The other thing that I should have included in the association case is that all key, I think.
On the right-hand side?
Well, so to have the ability
I see. So,
to,
so saying all goes to blah, blah, blah.
all goes to absolute point size of 7. Species goes to red, blue, green.
Yeah, I have to say that I find column absolutely incomprehensible in these examples that we have here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like I see 3 columns or 6 columns.
Yeah.
Right. And then somehow you say row. I guess it's right. But in both cases, I'm moving across the row. I'm just moving differently.
Right. I mean, I think my concern with the numeric one is that people would think it was a part specification or a
Right.
position.
It's a level specification.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. We could, I don't know if maybe there's just some name for like, could it be like, I mean, especially if we're only going 2 levels deep,
We're
can it be
not. We're
something
not necessarily going only 2 levels deep.
but could we do something like group and elements instead of column and rows or
I
1
don't
and
think it's a
2?
good idea. I think that, look, I also think that this isn't going to work because we might want mix-ins. I think it's going to have to be a list of rules.
Sorry, which is going to have to be a list of rules?
This association, because if we want mix-ins for these, we're not going to be able to get that because we're going to be unique in the association keys.
I don't think that's right. I think that those keys are going to be independent.
No, but if I say 1 arrow and then that's filling blah, 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 blah. See what I'm saying? The
No.
association
Oh,
will
I,
fill
I
off
I
those
see.
ones.
You're wanting to specify the different
Mix-ins.
types of directives independently.
Yeah, potential mix-ins. I maybe we don't want that, but
I don't think we want that. I
but
think that's making things even more confusing.
okay. Okay. But so let's just look at this thing.
But yeah, I think the other downside to the 1, besides not knowing which way we're counting the levels, is right. This could also be confused with things like, filling 1 goes to 2, right? You know, fill from
Yes, I
the one
understand.
curve to the next curve.
I agree. Um, Well, let's keep going to see what you have here.
Right.
Yeah, I was
I
going
mean,
to say having a level wrapper for indicating that's a level spec and not a position is an interesting idea, which I think is what you were
Yeah, that's
toying
what I
with
was saying.
there.
It won't work with actually the name level, but I didn't know this worked. Does that work now?
Yeah. Otherwise, I wouldn't have included it.
Okay, but look, 101 is just a bullshit. You did document, didn't you?
Yes.
The default colors, right? So the actual thing here would be.
well, those are not
Well, I
default
mean,
colors,
I
right?
mean,
No, I know.
bar
I mean,
chart does not take, the default plot colors. It generates from a gradient, and that is not named and not documented.
I'm sorry.
Because you decided not to, right? Brett
Right.
gives you
That
as a
was where it got
proposal.
too complicated, and we cut it off.
Okay, but here I can say color data of 101. And those are those colors. That's nice. But what is the one for the defaults?
Default plot colors.
Which I guess you're not in a recent 14.3, or that should autocomplete, I think. Didn't we add that autocompletion, Brett?
It's supposed to be added. I don't know if it's in the 14.3 builds yet.
Okay.
Okay.
That
Right.
autocompletion is elsewhere.
Okay. Let's go back through this again. Okay. Let's review what we think we know. Okay. We've got a bunch of syntax with plot style that, given what it is trying to style, it has to spray its styling into different levels of the thing that it has to style. Am I making sense? So what plot style means can depend on what it is styling. Does that make sense?
Yes, and some of what would be the most consistent isn't what happens because, V1 compatibility stuff.
Okay, all right. We'll deal with compatibility later. But the first point is there is a shape for the thing that is trying to be styled. And we are given some set of lists that are supposed to be the things used to style that thing. So the thing we have is a generally ragged, generally non-rectangular sort of collection of data. Am I making sense? And the thing that is provided for the styling is again a non-rectangular, non-whatever set of specifications. Do we agree?
I don't think we parse things out to that level. We do not.
Well, I mean, and there's differences between like plot and list plot.
Yeah.
I mean, plot is forgiving about the list structure of the functions in its first argument.
Yeah, okay. Whereas
list plot is not. If you start putting extra levels of lists around,
it'll get totally confused. Okay,
yeah.
so right now the forgivingness of plot, it's unclear whether that's a good idea, because it could be that could be a key into something in the styles. That's not what we're doing right now. We're flattening right now.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, no, I mean we aren't flat. I mean we're partially
flattening. Yes, we're flattening the data. We're flattening the functions to be plotted.
I mean, but only to
not really.
One level. I mean, so if you have, create a little. I mean, go down to
No, I'm looking at this plot example, right?
Right.
We've got these examples. I had an example somewhere down here where we had this example here, for example. Right? That's a two-level nesting. Now, does that two-level nesting mean squat to plot?
I mean, so what happens is that will flatten, but not all the way. By which I mean it's not the same as wrapping flatten around.
I can see that.
Yes.
Because what it's doing is it's taking this structure and it's applying plot style. The first element of plot style applies to the first element of the outer list, and the second element of plot style applies to the second element of the outer list.
Correct. And that's as far down as it goes.
Okay, I understand. But my general principle, there is data. It has a certain shape.
Mhm.
There is styling information. It has a certain shape. Those two things have to be conformed in some way. Am I
Yes.
making sense? Okay. Now, what you're proposing further down with these associations is a much more structured way to do that specification,
Yes.
right? Okay, so what I think we need to think about is what is the structured way to do it? And then how does it elide and default back in the case where you're just using lists? And in general, there can be structure on both sides. There can be structure both in the data and in the styling information. Make sense? The structure in the data would be like in a tabular with named columns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Um, okay. So that's what we have. We've got lists, we've got associations, et cetera, in the data and in the styling. And okay, we got the concept of mixins. Right. I mean, one thing is the styling okay, one possibility is the styling conforms to the structure of the data. We have styling information in the exact same shape as the data. Because that's what's happening in your association thing. Is it? No, it's not
Well, I
quite.
mean, the
It's breaking that.
association is much more rigid,
No, but
right?
look, let me show you an example. Let me show an example which I don't think is being thought about correctly. Okay, so let's take, where did I have my association? Here we go. Okay, so I have this association. So I have a list of associations.
Yep.
Well, I guess
What?
maybe it is doing some, well, some flattening. I didn't think it did that. Here, let me kind of put a pair of inputs in chat.
Okay. But here, if I say plot style here, that is super confusing.
You have 10 data sets and 3 styles.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So I have 3 data sets and 3 styles there. And each style is applied to a data set. Now,
Yes.
you are proposing that I could say in here, instead of this, I could say association X goes to red. In which case, every X point is going to be made red, correct?
No.
Oh, gosh. Really?
I mean, so if you did that, it would look at the unique X values, the set of unique X values. Well, I mean, okay, in this case, everything would just be red. Yeah, but if you had red, blue, then it would
Okay,
look
that's a very
at
confusing other thing. So that's a different case from what we've seen before. That's not using essentially take the thing that's labeled X and make it red, which is what
correct.
which I don't think is right. I mean, so you've got yet another case for the tabular thing where you're using essentially a key to determine the colors. This isn't that case.
Right.
This is the X is just determining the shape of the data.
Right. I mean, I'm not sure what this could mean that would be useful.
Make the X points red. Make every X point red. Look, I mean, I could say, and I don't know whether this is a good idea,
But it's using a different equivalence. This is saying,
this may be a silly thing, but I mean, that would be make the points by default yellow, but make the ones that are labeled with X red. This may not be a good idea.
I got to run. Sorry.
Okay, here's the thing we need, right? So we've opened this conversation. There's more to figure out here.
Mhm.
Two things. First of all, go through every function to make sure that there are no other cases of how this, of styling. I mean, I have no idea whether number line plot or, bubble chart, these things, they all have different numbers of levels of dimensions and things that have to get styled.
Right. I mean, and there are some things that go beyond this in some way. So for example, reimplot has a style for what re looks like and what m looks like.
Okay.
That mixes in with plot style.
How about complex plot 3D?
It's just a color function. So
Yeah, yeah. You can only ever plot one thing. So
yeah.
Okay, so in a case like this, that's complicated because now if I say plot style, okay, and if I were to do red comma blue,
Arc is red, arccos is blue.
Yep.
Okay, with a mix in for the dotted lines.
Yes.
Yes,
And there's a symbol rem style.
Yep.
You could say dotted comma dashed or something.
I'm sorry, what's rem style? What?
Yeah, just add that to the end.
After plot style.
Yep. And yeah, dash dotted, and you'll see what it does.
Ooh, fancy.
Okay. Right. So that's a way to do, that's essentially what Roger was saying, the vector data.
Right. And in the case of the new design, I mean, maybe in this case, reimplot would have just plot style and a special, re key and m key or something.
Maybe. I think this is pretty decent design. I think it's comprehensive.
Right. I mean, the advantage here is that we always know that it's a vector of length 2, right?
Exactly.
So Yeah, I don't know if you want to look at those inputs I put in
Yeah, okay.
chat. I expected these two inputs to produce the same output, and they didn't. Which is, I guess, where I'm dealing with undefined behavior, but I was still a bit surprised.
By the way, we need to talk about evaluate and plot. Maybe after all these years, we can solve this. Just saying.
Yep.
Can we please have that on the agenda for one of these graphics meetings?
Sure.
Okay.
That surprises me a little bit.
So it's not just me, right? Yeah, I expected them to both be like without the evaluate, since in both cases
No, that doesn't surprise me.
Okay, why does this not surprise you?
Because the second one without the evaluate, it's coloring them before it unpacks them.
Sure, but in the second case, in the first case, I expected to get the same coloring, right? Just like you did with whatever, with your sine x cosine x, right?
Right. I mean, I think what confused me at first is the top one looked like, it might have 10 colors instead of 5.
Right, I think it has 5 colors. Each one of those sections, the sines and the cosines, each go through their 5 colors. That's what's happening, right?
Yes.
So,
just maybe still weird.
well, what's happening here, is it a level 1 coloring or is it a level 2 coloring?
No, but see, in your previous example, right, when you had the list of sines and cosines, right, one pair was, right, wasn't one pair red and another blue? I don't know, maybe you had
Can you
this
set
was
plot legends goes to automatic on that first one? I'm curious. No, it is doing 10 colors.
So it's effectively just flattening the list.
Yep.
Yes.
That's not what I expected either. I mean, there I might have expected it would go drill and it would use level 2 coloring, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Right.
So you might want level 1 coloring, you might want level 2 coloring, or you might want level infinity coloring.
What does that mean?
I treat everything different.
Yeah, well, I believe you mean all, or yes,
Yeah,
0 minus 1.
It's not a level. It's
right, but what we're learning here is that the kind of, which is what we've seen multiple times here. Do you want to cycle through colors at level 1 or at level 2, or some kind of mix in? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, although this isn't a mix-in, right?
No, I know it's not a mix-in, but,
Yeah.
the first question is, you chose a different default for chart style and for plot style previously. That is, that chart style is cycling at level 2 and plot style is cycling at level 1. Correct?
Roughly, yes. I mean, it can cycle at either, but with just a single list of colors.
Yeah, it's cycling at level 1, and level 2 it never gets to see because there's never a because the plot functions just flatten. So the things they're plotting are always a 1-level list.
Yes.
So it really isn't defined what happens with there's no sense in saying I want to cycle at level 2.
Right, because it's not a documented syntax at the moment.
Right. Whereas for bar charts and things, there is a level 2.
Yes.
Okay. So the big question again, I mean, this thing with categorical data and coloring by the values of those categories is a very different orthogonal kind of thing. Perfectly useful, but it's a very different kind of thing.
It is a very different sort of thing, but I wanted to make sure that it was part of the design.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing to have.
Yes.
Although I also think that clearly one should be able to make synthetic lists of associations and things. If you have a list, an association, a list of associations, you do the arrow syntax to extract particular subkeys in the associations. Um, uh,
Yeah. By the way, I just did some testing and it really does look like it's flattening it. So, no matter how many, if I fully construct all the list levels, before feeding it to plot, it really does look like it's flattening it and then just, it's going through the list of styles linearly through the
yeah,
flattened
that's what I
list.
would expect.
So,
Okay, but I just want to say that it's important, Brett, that you support the handmade list of associations with the same kind of syntactic forms as the tabular. Agreed? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand. There's some cases I want to try to see where the ambiguous cases are.
Okay, I don't think they're ambiguous. And I think also that data set should work the same way.
Data
You
set is easier,
okay? Did you
or
already
at
do it?
least more clear.
Did you already do it?
No, not yet.
So that needs to be done.
Yes.
Okay, but now the thing I'm still exercised about is the confirmation of the list of the data list structure and the styling list structure. So I'm saying it's not obvious to me how to do that. And whether we can have a clearer syntax using associations and things. I kind of feel like, okay, let's review this again. Okay, so I'm going to claim that we have data here, and the data will be, let's say we've got data is, I don't know how to write this, but dd, data, whatever it is, some nasty ragged list of data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One principle, in my opinion, is that if we have a style specification, if we have a plot style, oops, not what I wanted. A plot style that looks like this. Okay, this would be a principle possibly. That a plot style that looks like this, that conforms with the structure of the data, will color corresponding things with corresponding things. Right? I mean, I'll number it. Let's number this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I'm suggesting is that in this case, this is sort of a boundary condition on what we're doing. It's not the only thing we're doing, but it's a boundary condition. If the structure of the styling matches the structure of the data, then the corresponding elements do apply.
I'm having PTSD about pick.
About what?
Pick.
Ah.
Which has an infinite number of inputs that nobody can actually predict what they will be.
What do you mean? I use pick quite a lot.
It's very easy to have pick not what you intended.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, this is indeed pick-like.
Yes. Yes, I think if you only ever use the 2-argument form, it's probably fine. But
the moment third argument mean?
Well, that is the $64 question.
Okay, I see. It's the element. Yes. It specifies what's true.
No, I mean, I think the issue with pick is, if you take that last pick and you change, if you put a list around the first A,
This one here.
yes.
Does
Okay,
just
that
fine.
was,
It'll do just fine.
Yeah.
If I remove the list around these, then it'll get confuzzled.
yeah, no, I mean, it's been a while since I've run into the issue with pick, so,
Okay, but
but
then this is
anyway,
my suggested principle. That principle be followed, and that we can elide that syntax in all kinds of ways, but that should be the overarching concept. In other words, if you go deeper, if the S's are deeper, they might be used like directives. If the D's are deeper, then a single S will cover multiple D's.
right.
Yes. I mean, if this doesn't, well, I mean, the problem with this approach is that then it's not easy to sort of do any sort of customization. Well, maybe if you have the list and the cyclic, maybe.
Particularly with cyclic, I think it is. I mean,
Uh,
the thing one might like to have be the case is that you can introduce the plot style for a wide range of data constructs and have it do something sensible. But I think that there isn't much choice. I mean, if the data has a different form, the styles may or may not conform to it.
right. And well, but it's,
I mean, I think the issue is that, the style will sort of always conform to it, just not how you expected.
yes.
Well, it depends on our rules for confirmation, which we haven't given yet.
But
What we're
right.
saying
Well,
is,
but yes, but well, right. But you specify, two colors to alternate and, have K curves is a super common syntax, which obviously will not match this.
why not?
Uh, well,
It's fine. It's absolutely fine. If we've got curves, C1, C2, C3,
uh-huh,
C4, okay? And then we have plot style, arrow red, green.
uh-huh.
We're
Well,
fine.
yeah, how does that conform? How are
No,
those
listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying, okay, it's just like we're making a design that is supposed to cover many cases.
Mhm.
All I'm doing is I'm giving a boundary condition for how that works. In other words, if they conform, then we just have this correspondence. If they don't conform, then we have to describe what happens in the non-conforming case.
Okay.
I'm just giving a boundary condition for something that must be true. So, for example, if I said plot style are red, green, blue, yellow, and there are four things there, C1 would get red, C2 would get green, C3 would get yellow, whatever I said, right?
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm just defining a boundary condition. I didn't define the kind of elisions and degeneracies from that boundary condition.
Okay. Well, yeah, the question is, well, are these continuous boundary conditions?
What do you mean by that?
Right, that there aren't, that there isn't, a small tweak you would make that you might think would work that would
I understand. That
that
depends a bit on how the elision works.
right. Right, because suppose you had you know suppose C3 was list. Well, I guess it depends on your also depends on your definition of conforming. If C3 was list, C3, C5, C6, and then you gave, you know,
Then it's not conforming. I mean, in this form here, it's not conforming. But if you'd made it conform, the whole
wait, wait,
point,
wait, wait, no, no. But then you gave four colors. Is that conforming or not conforming?
it's not conforming. It's the different list structure,
Okay.
right? It's a different list structure. The only case I'm saying is the boundary condition where it will always work. where you can be absolutely certain it will work is if the list structure of the stylings matches the list structure of the data.
Right.
Okay. Then what I would say is the way to do the elision is if
With
there are
with direct, well,
is the following, that if there is more data, more levels of data than style, the style applies to all the levels of data. If there is more levels of style than data, it becomes a directive. Now, what's the issue here? The issue is the current chart style behavior where you are operating at level 2. The question is, how do you specify that? And I would argue a reasonable specification probably would be something like this. Bar chart, A, B, C, D. That's what I would propose. In other words, you're going down another level, and now the question is, where is it cyclic? And if we say it, okay, here's the thing. The claim would be always cyclic if it is too short. Okay? And then this just works because it's cyclic, it's too short on level 1, so it cycles. Level 2, it conforms, so it goes red-green. See what I'm saying?
I think that makes sense.
oh, I think we're entering pick territory, but I'm not going to try to attack this live.
Don't pick it apart.
I just won't implement this
yet.
using pick.
Okay, but look, we should wrap up in a second here. But I'm going to make my case again. Okay, point 1. I really like the idea that if your plot styles agree in structure with your data, you know what's going to happen. There's no funny business, right? If your plot styles are somehow less specific than your data, in other words, they drill less than your data drills, then one plot style applies to many pieces of data, many data sets. I think it's going to work. I mean,
Well,
try it.
I mean, conceptually, it makes sense. I'm not sure how to implement it yet.
Well, okay, but I don't think
and
I don't think it's so hard.
and the other issue I see is if you want to, use cyclic in here, well, it's definitely not going to conform. So how,
What do you mean? I mean, it's cyclic by default, but you can use cyclic explicitly.
Right, but if you want to
I
use
think
a
he's saying that cyclic breaks the list structure.
Yeah, you're saying that in this case here, where I've got cyclic AB, and then I've got C there, something hanging out the end of a cyclic. What do you do with that?
Right.
Right? Okay, I'm going to argue.
Yeah, or even, D in front of the cyclic and C.
Okay, so I'm actually going to argue, I'm going to make an argument here that we should do this.
No.
That should be a form of cyclic.
No, right. That's completely incompatible with.
What else is there in cyclic? I thought cyclic was one argument function.
Yes.
Well, but you can do.
But you can extract.
Well, I mean, I guess.
But it goes from 0 to infinity, or from minus infinity to infinity. So what happens here when you?
I see. Okay. Okay, but that's okay. More work to be done there.
Yeah. Okay.
But we're making a lot of progress in my view. We're actually not far off, I think.
Okay.
Good stuff. Think about it. Pick holes in it as we pick holes in pick.
Yep.
All right. See you guys later.
See ya.